Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. On June 28th this year, Poland celebrated the 100th anniversary of the signing of the Versailles Treaty. The Versailles Treaty forced Germany to allow a Polish state to be reborn, as well as respecting its western border. An accomplishment largely owed to the famous pianist Ignacy Paderewski. Today we will be speaking to the historian Dr. Krzysztof Jabłonka about the background, the implementation, and the importance of the Versailles Treaty. So we are on the conversation about the Versailles Treaty, and I was wondering how the great powers at the time intended to safeguard the provision of said treaty, and when and how did the treaty stop working?
Traktat wersalski w początkowej swojej fazie.
At first, the Versailles Treaty seemed to be a perfect tool to build lasting peace in the world. Let us remember that the treaty is also called the Conditions of Peace. It refers not only to those dictated to the Germans, but also to the foundation of the League of Nations. One of the conditions of peace was the settlement of all disputes through political and diplomatic negotiations, not by war. It has a wider framework than a normal treaty between countries. It is international. Everyone who signed it became signatories of a new, previously unknown in Europe, League of Nations, an international forum to ensure peace, which was defined as the good of all nations. The treaty protected the world from the outbreak of war as long as it was respected and treated seriously. Initially, the text was translated into every possible language to ensure everybody could read it. I also have the original French text with a Polish translation. Every point and every paragraph are very detailed and precise, therefore possible to perform. However, there was a very dangerous path to dismantle the treaty from the inside. This was to convince the public opinion, therefore the politicians, and then the international opinion, that the treaty is too harsh towards Germany and should be eased. They argued that everyone was responsible for the war and wanted to obtain the same rights as other countries. These actions began to take effect.
Opinię międzynarodową, że traktat jest zbyt ciężki dla Niemiec, że należy go złagodzić.
It is not true that the Germans were the first to dismantle the treaty and break the peace. The first were the British, then the American press played a large role in this, and in the dismantling of Versailles, the Soviet side was extremely interested, Stalin in particular. He hated the treaty, and his minister Molotov was to say about Poland that it was the bastard of the treaty, that it had created an abomination of a treaty for no apparent reason. The first moment in which the foundations of the treaty were outlined were two treaties called the Locarno treaties, and then in Belgium dismantling the collective solidarity. It had assumed that any violation of these rules would mobilize all participants to a one-off counteraction. However, one to always withdraw was Germany. They did indeed attempt to violate this, however the attitude of all countries toward them caused Germany to begin paying reparations and retreating from territories which were unrightfully claimed. In Locarno, however, the responsibility for two geographical locations was established. The Germans cleverly played out the doubts for their total submission to the Western states. For instance, the promise of invariability of borders in the West, which included Rhineland, Belgium, the independence of Luxembourg, which Germany wanted to incorporate into the Great Reich. They were granted consent to alter the borders in the east. The western borders were to remain unchanged. This is when terror struck Poland and Czechoslovakia. These countries had to defend their independence. The Poles quickly counteracted this situation and signed a non-aggression pact with Russia and later with Germany. Czechoslovakia, however, found itself in a much worse position.
A więc na Renie z Belgią, niepodległość Luksemburga, który przecież Niemcy chciały wcielić do Wielkiej Rzeszy.
The first order of business was merging with Austria. After this, the Czech Republic was surrounded from every possible side. Only Slovakia remained beyond the reach of the Germans. It was then that Slovakia was persuaded to fight for its independence. The part of the Czech Republic which was mostly inhabited by Germans was so subdued that they broke the Versailles Treaty, demanding sovereignty. Then the tragedy of Czechoslovakia began, from disrespecting the treaty. Much earlier, the entry and militarization of Rhineland, which was to be completely demilitarized for 50 years, and the German army were not to approach their borders by 60 kilometers, caused the Germans to return to this area.
Z wszystkich trzech możliwych stron. Jedynie Słowacja była poza zasięgiem Niemców. Ale z tą sobie poradzono.
The lack of
Namówiono
reaction
ją
of
do
France and
niepodległości.
England caused Hitler's party to revolt, and this was the direct correlation to leading the Germans to a revenge war, not only with Poland, but also with the West. This ended with a tragedy 4 times greater than the First World War. It became a Second World War instead of the peace that the treaty was meant to provide. The treaty was not responsible for the war breaking out, but its dismantling and lowering its value. If we do not respect the established laws, we can expect lawlessness that we could have never imagined.
To możemy doczekać się bezprawia, którego byśmy sobie nie życzyli.
As the Versailles Treaty faltered and Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany in 1933, Poland quickly realized that his aggressive rhetoric was bound to soon be translated into official state policy. Next up, we will ask Dr. Jabłonka about the countermeasures Poland planned to take against German aggression. So when Poland noticed that Germany is attempting to break the Versailles Treaty, they decided to plan a preemptive war against Germany. And I was wondering what the plan looks like and how did it go about?
Ważną rzeczą było pilnowanie.
It was crucial to make sure that the revanchist movement in Germany did not reach power. This, unfortunately, happened in 1933, when the president, Paul von Hindenburg, the general and then marshal of the First World War, entrusted Adolf Hitler with the function of Chancellor of the Reich. At this point, the Poles questioned the French whether they are ready for a preventive strike that would destroy this arrangement and would restore this relatively democratic Weimar Republic. Unfortunately, they were met with the lack of an unambiguous answer. The procrastination of France, who at the time was observing the United Kingdom, whose answers were also divided, allowed the Poles to realize that the Allies would rather allow for Germany to have its way with Poland. They then made a quick decision to sign a non-aggression treaty with Germany, who would then go on to break it in 1939. It seemed that the Poles were in a secure situation, but Piłsudski's policy outlined equal distances between Moscow and Berlin and to not join with one against the other. Poland could have gained a lot by choosing one of these sides, but the Poles did not want to join either. As a result of this, both sides decided to work with one another and attacked Poland.
Między sobą i zmierzyły Polskę.
As we have seen today, the Versailles Treaty was crucial for Poland to reappear on the map after 123 years of partition by Russia, Prussia, and Austria. The Polish delegation to Paris had to work hard to convince the great powers to draft a treaty that's favorable to Poland. It was made possible by the excellent cooperation between the 3 fathers of Polish independence, Piłsudski, Dmowski, Paderewski, showing just how much can be done by working together. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. Now see you next time on Poland Daily History.